First, let's take our first guest for today. Political parties and presidential and National Assembly candidates have signed the first National Peace Accord on issue-based campaigns ahead of the 2027 general elections, pledging to shun violence, hate speech, misinformation, personal attacks, and other conduct capable of undermining the electoral process. In a message, President Bola Tinubu, also the APC presidential candidate, called on political parties and candidates to exercise restraint and avoid exploiting ethnic, religious, or other divisive sentiments during the campaigns. Joining us on the show to discuss the flag-off of campaigns for political parties, what to expect from the candidates, and the role of political debates in mirroring candidates' readiness is Professor Pat Utomi, a political economist and leadership advocate. Good morning, Professor Pat Utomi.
Good morning.
Thanks for joining us today.
Prof, good morning. Yesterday we talked about the National Peace Committee and the Peace Accord that was signed in Abuja. And, I tried to give a bit of history of it, how all of this started during the Jonathan administration. And I recall, although I didn't mention his name yesterday, Senator Ben Obi, who is your good friend, who was the one who managed the process from the government side, liaising with the members of the National Peace Committee. And now, years later, we see here about Peace Accord, National Peace Committee. And in all the various elections since then, we always have this Peace Accord being signed. Do you think that the Peace Accord has continued to meet its objectives? And if not, where is the problem? The other issue raised in the introduction is about political debates. Now, there are some people who think by the time these political debates are held, they don't serve any purpose any longer because the electorate will have made up their minds, maybe for a small percentage of undecided voters. But when we went to Osun State, I think before the election, we even saw, well, it wasn't a debate, but a town hall, which in some of the assessments that have been reported, people even said, well, that town hall meeting, the people hearing directly in what looks like a competitive environment helped the Osun electorate to make up their mind. There were some people who said, well, the winner of that election, he came across looking better than people saw him previously, because he could show more confidence, he could show familiarity with the subject, he could show experience. So what would be your argument for or against the continuation of the tradition of political debates? If they say they don't want to debate, should we use the Arise method of town hall? At least if you don't want to debate, come and say something to the people, since you want the position.
Well, thank you, Ruby. Well, first and foremost, I think that it is important that the effort being made to encourage the signing of a peace accord, that tradition continue, because it, in many ways, tells the electorate about the attitude of the candidates. And that is very important, the attitude of the candidates. When the candidates take the people for granted, it comes through, beginning from that whole peace debate accord platform. The second thing about debates is they are so very important. I can tell you without any equivocation, in 1993, what made the swing completely towards Abiola away from Tufa was the debate. Once they got on that national platform, and the people could feel them, hear them, and draw from just their body language what kind of connection they would have with the people, they could easily make up their minds that this was not a people's person, this was a people's person, that's who we're going to vote for. So debates are very important. I would even insist that we have one every month from now till election day, because it gives deep insights into the candidate. Now, candidates who are not well prepared, candidates who are not well will tend to run away from debates. Plus, the citizens must insist on debates. I was part of the group that went to, well, I guess get coached on the American debate system, included the late Raymond Dekwesi, John Momo. I think a bunch of us were in Washington back in the day, I think in the 90s, on that. And we met with the CNN anchor of the time and all of those people, and they gave very deep insights into the value of debate. And I hold on to that. They are so, so very important, these debates. How do we define, in fact, for the people, not just the candidates, an agenda for the country? Candidates will throw up agenda that, advance their own short-term interests. But the debate process will emerge an agenda that is what the country looks to. For example, today, the most important thing before Nigeria is the young people of Nigeria, whose future is not just at stake in the typical way we talk about it, but is very, very at stake because it's significantly threatened. Look, in the run-up to a Ghanaian independence, the Osajefo himself, Kwame Nkrumah, said to Africans, look ye first to the political kingdom and all else will be added. They became independent in 1957. In 1958, when Arthur Lewis, who became the first black man to win the Nobel Prize in economics, was working on if you will, a formula for industrialization of the Gold Coast, which is the name of the book that came out of his work, Nkrumah again called together leaders of emerging Africa to focus on the economy. If there's one thing that is clear about the Nigerian experience, is that politics has damaged the economy of Africa. It is that politicians have mismanaged Africa. Look, your alma mater, Ruby, University of Calabar, invited me to give the convocation lecture, I think about 2012, 14, thereabouts. And I titled my convocation lecture, The Pursuit of Poverty, to show that African politicians almost deliberately want their people to be poor. And a group of University of Calabar lecturers took it up and then did a fresh script, a book in my honor, so to speak, in which I wrote a lead chapter that was titled The Pursuit of Poverty, Nigeria and the Pursuit of Poverty, or something like that. We have to put the pressure on politicians now to focus on the young people of this country and how a demographic dividend can be extracted from the youth bulge. If we allow them to just go off on the kinds of things they talk about, Nigeria is in trouble.
Okay, thank you so much, Professor Patutomi. But let me come from the other side of the debate around debates, which is that why should people like the president attend debates when debates have demonstrated in the past not to have been instrumental to winning or losing elections? I'll give a case in point. President Muhammadu Buhari, he attended debates in 2003, 2007, 2011. He didn't win. He didn't attend debates in 2015 and 2019. He won. President Bola Ahmed Tinubu did not attend a presidential debate in 2023. He won. And so maybe because the people who watch or listen to the debates don't vote. What are the challenges? And how can we, because I agree with you that debates are a key part of the democratic process, but if it doesn't demonstrate any political value to the candidates, what is the persuasion for them to attend debates?
Well, you make a very interesting statement about elections in Nigeria when you say Buhari did not attend and he won. When he attended, he didn't win. I debated Buhari in 2007. I was presidential candidate. We at the ECOWAS Secretariat, that's where that took place. And I think the tape is still available, the debate. I recognize General Buhari was talking off point 90% of the time. But the spirit of that moment often led me to say, okay, General, I think you meant to say this and that, but, you know. I remember the BBC woman came to me afterwards and said, That's quite a curious debate. We are more or less coaching this man. What kind of debate is that? And I said, well, it's our country. We've got to learn somehow to work together to get it. So General Buhari would not have won based on a debate, which is probably why he did not do too well as a president anyway. There are other forces sometimes that come along with debates to decide outcomes. It's even more difficult in Nigeria, where elections have not been honest instruments of determining the will of the people. You and I know that. So we still can't give up on the right way of doing things because the wrong ways have produced outcomes. And those outcomes we know have not been salutary to where the Nigerian people want to be. Look, I will not give up on saying this. When I was returning to this country in 1982, after PhD and everything, I was dead certain that by my 60th birthday, Nigeria would be a $30,000 per capita economy. I turned 70 and it was around 1,000. There's a reason. The reason is because we've not been led properly. And that comes from how we have taken the most important things in the electoral process not too seriously. And so we must begin to correct those errors and make sure that we put politicians their feet to the fire. Let's not give excuses for people who are looking to show contempt to the Nigerian people by avoiding putting themselves before them to debate the issues that matter to them.
Thank you so much. I think for further reading, those that think debates are not important should ask those that run away from debates, why do they run away from debates? If they were not important, people will not run away from debates. They know that the debates will show them in very terrible light. That's why they run away from debates. That's why they run away from interviews. And that's why they don't come on platforms like this. That's just it. So that's why they run away, pure and simple. I mean, we know what a debate does. We know how a debate swayed Kennedy and Nixon and one of the first televised debates in America in the 60s. We know what that debate done. We even know the role of a debate in Nigeria, 1993, Abiola and Bashir Tofa. We know what that debate did in consolidating Abiola's candidature that year. It was the debate. So the times debate mattered in this country. It was after the debate a lot of Nigerians felt it was Abiola that Tofa couldn't match him. So we know. But
absolutely right.
I want to just ask this. Can we also codify electoral debates as part of the electoral season? I can't remotely fact check, but
sorry, come again.
Can we also codify in the electoral law the role and the mandatory nature of debates? I will fact check myself after, but I think in countries like South Korea, the need for a debate is codified. I might be wrong, but I will fact check myself after. But I think I'd stumbled on it reading it somewhere. That in countries like South Korea, it is codified in the law, the need for electoral debates.
Absolutely. Let me tell you, Rufai, it is actually part of the legend of the politics of South Korea that they were saved by debates. You know, South Korean politics in the early days is very similar to Nigerian politics, cash and carry, you know, buy votes, big man, stuff like that. And they saw the mess and the consequences. And the Electoral Commission, and that's why I will never stop being angry with INEC. It has failed the Nigerian people again and again and again. In fact, this story was told by Muhammadu Jega, Professor Jega, how they went on a visit to South Korea, met the Electoral Commission, and the Electoral Commission said to them that when they then insisted that debates will be central to elections, the money bags ran away. That's how serious people began to govern South Korea. I tell you, I challenged Jega at a public lecture at the NIIA with this question some years ago. And he said to me, you are right, but we've not had Apple time or whatever to make that happen in Nigeria. We can't continue to take that cop out. The INEC has a burden, a responsibility to make sure that the debates take place in our country. It has a burden of voter education to make people understand why they're going to the polls. It has the burden of explaining to people why taking money to vote for somebody is a crime. It has the burden, but INEC has consistently failed to execute in the interest of the Nigerian people. This needs to change. If we want to save this country, we need to retool INEC and the fundamental philosophy that governs how that institution operates.
Okay, in fact, to buttress my point, there's a National Election Broadcasting Debate Commission in South Korea that handles the mandatory rule of broadcasting and ensuring that debates across political line happen in South Korea.
Yeah, all right, okay.
When are we going to have that in Nigeria?
I would love to see the percentage of elites or the educated people who vote in South Korea. And that's why I asked the question tied to people who watch the votes, watch the debates, actually going out to vote, and a persuasion that until we get elite buy-in and participation and involvement in elections, we will just continue to have people who are not making informed decisions when it comes to their vote choices. Thank you so much, sir. Oh, Mr. Professor Patutobi. Very quickly, sir. Very quickly, sir.
Are you done?
Yes, very quickly, sir.
Oh, okay, yeah. No, very quickly, yes. You know, a few days ago, I think last week in Bauchi, President Obasanjo made a remarkable presentation on democratic process in Africa and what really is democracy from our perspective. And I think that if we take that talk on board, we will see that institutions of the electoral process have a fundamental obligation to looking at what is the nature of the African electorate. People think that people who do not have letters, PhD, BSc, and all that, are not politically savvy. Why is it that your Megad, with his telephone tuned to the Hausa service on the BBC, understands more of what's going on in the polity than many of you who are supposed to be the experts?
All right.
Let's not look at their certificates. Let's create processes that bring them in to engage, and you will find that they have more knowledge about how they can be governed than most of the people who pretend to try to govern them.
All right, brilliant. Thank you so much, sir, for your time with us today. Always a pleasure having you here on the morning show.